This is Rabbi Yitzchak David Smith with a few words on Parshas Noach. After the flood, God gave a command to renew the command He gave to Adam and Eve to be fruitful and multiply. And He says to Noah, after he leaves the ark with his sons, He blesses them. And this is the beginning of chapter 10, verse 1. He blesses them and his sons, and He says to them, Pru Urvu miloas haaretz, you should be fruitful and multiply, and you should fill the entire world. Now, the Parsha continues, and it explains different instructions that God gave to Noah. And then it says that anyone who commits a murder has to be executed in verse 6. And it says, Kibetzelem Elohim asas Adam, because in the image of God man was created. And that because of that, that's why it's necessary to execute a murderer. Then, in the 7th pasuk, in the 7th verse, it says, Ve'atam Pru Urvu shirtzu va'aretz uvu vo. Again, it says you should be fruitful and you should multiply and you should teem. The earth should be teeming with human beings, and you should be multitudinous and fill the entire world. So the question Rashi asks is, why is it that God Almighty repeats this statement that you should be fruitful and multiply? So Rashi says, Lefi pshute, according to its simple meaning, the first statement was for a blessing, and the second here is as a command that you have to be fruitful and multiply. You have to fill the world, that it should be teeming with beautiful human beings. Ulefi midrashe, and according to the Medrash, lahakish mi she'eno isik b'pri urvia l'shefech damim, to bring an equivalency between those that are not involved in being fruitful and multiplying and bringing children to the world to a person who's a murderer. Now, the question you would have to ask yourself is, number one is, why is it equivalent to being a murderer if a person prevents himself or prevents others, even also, if he prevents others from being involved in being fruitful and multiplying? Why is that equivalent to murder? Well, the answer is in the previous verse. The previous verse says that a person who murders another person is culpable of the death penalty because he extinguished the image of God from the world. By killing another human being, you are actually extinguishing the image of God from the world. It's not that God is not saying don't kill other people because of some sort of social compact, which the anti-religious philosophers like to suggest, that somehow it's a social compact because if one kills another, then the other person could get killed and everyone has the benefit if we don't murder. That's not the answer. The answer is because by killing a person, you are extinguishing, you are eliminating the image of God from the world, and therefore it's forbidden. Therefore, the person who did the murder has taken an act against God and against God's image in the world, and therefore he has to be executed. So a person who prevents or does not involve himself in the command to be fruitful and multiply is also involved in the exact same problem. The problem is he's not bringing the image of God into the world. He's not recognizing his own value in bringing fruit and children into the world, of his own value of replicating. And because of that, he's equivalent to a murderer because he's not bringing the Tselem Elohim, the divine image, into the world. So therefore, he is equivalent to a murderer. This is what Rashi is telling us. Now this tells us something very, very important, that it's important to wake up all of humanity of the necessity to be fruitful and multiply, and that they are important enough, they are valuable enough in God Almighty's eyes that they should be bringing more children into the world. If they didn't get married, they should be getting married. If they are married and don't have children, they should have children. If they've only had 1 or 2 children, they should have more children, because this is God's command and instructions for all humanity, that the world is supposed to be teeming with human beings. And a person who prevents himself from that is involved in equivalent to a murderer. There's also other commandments that are implicated by not being involved in being fruitful and multiplying, including the commandment against worshiping idols and the commandment against stealing, but this is not the time to specifically address those. But this also is a wake-up call for anybody who thinks it's okay to stay silent while there are programs going on to discourage humanity from having children, both in the United States and in all other countries in the world, particularly in Africa and India and China, to think it's okay to stay silent. Discouraging people and preventing people from having children is an act of murder. It's the equivalent to murder. This is what Rashi is telling us. And in addition, convincing people that they then believe that having smaller families and only having one child, as we see the propaganda that's used to suggest to people in third world countries, so to speak, that they're called, they're suggesting that big families are a lot of problems and small families are no problems. This is propaganda to cause people to no longer be involved in the commandment and the instruction and God's wish and his both his blessing and his command that they should be fruitful and multiply, and then now involving those people in their confusion into the very problem that Rashi is addressing over here. And also it goes to tell us that those people who had the opportunity and have the opportunity to object to the attempts to divert portions of the population from getting married, a marriage between a man and a woman, that in their silence, they are condoning people from being involved. They are condoning people who are making it as a mission not to be involved in being fruitful and multiply. Those people who are silent and not making a point have educated them that the proper way of a human being is to be married and to be fruitful and multiply and bring children into the world. That person is participating in what is the equivalent of murder. And it's very important that every single person speak up openly and clearly to make sure that this is not allowed to happen, that every human being needs to know that they're created in the divine image, and it's their responsibility to bring the divine image into the world through having children, and this is what brings blessing to the entire world and brings blessing to all of humanity, and we should all merit to see the fulfillment of these blessings and the fulfillment of these commands, which is a planet that is teeming with humanity, more human beings than we could possibly ever count, and we will merit all with one language and all with one effort to be able to serve God Almighty with the coming of the righteous Mashiach. Now. Okay, next.